My name is Lonnie Stern, and I'm part of the group that'll be hosting our conversation tonight. Before we get started, I did want to point out that we are enabling a live transcript. So if you need closed captioning, you can do so at the bottom of your screen. And if you don't want to see live transcript, you can click on the caret next to it and hide the subtitles. In addition, we do have Spanish language translation and interpretation going on. And to help us access that, I did want to invite Jamila Mavrakis here just to explain that in Spanish for our guests tonight as well.
Hola, buenas tardes. Si participa en español, debería estar escuchando traducciones al español en vivo en este momento, o si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, haga clic en el botón Interpretación en la parte inferior de la pantalla y seleccione la opción en español.
Well, it's wonderful to see so many people with us. We're going to get started today with a robust discussion. Just to make sure you know who's in the room, we've got a bunch of people back here who are excited that you're attending today. I did want to take a moment to introduce a few people you'll probably see on screen tonight. So if you could please, Sophia, Vikram, Andrew, and I think Jerry as well. If you could just turn on your camera and say hello, it'd be great. So that way you're a familiar face later on tonight. Let's see, I'm still looking for Andrew. Go ahead, Vikram.
Just saying hi and thank you for joining us tonight.
All
Hey,
right.
happy to be here, everyone.
Great, and I love all the snazzy backgrounds you've got here. Well, thanks everybody for being here for the SoCo working group. Some of you may just be interested in South Congress and or in Project Connect more generally. Now, working groups are a way for you to provide feedback in a more geographically focused area. For some folks, they just have an interest in one piece of the line. And for tonight, we're going to focus on the SoCo area, starting from Oltorf Station to about Nelly Academy. And the goal is to serve as a focus group for our National Environmental Protection Act working on construction, outreach, and planning. And you'll be a sounding board, not just in this planning phase, but later on as the project gets moving. Could you go to the next slide, please? Great. So for tonight, our speakers are gonna turn on their cameras as they speak and introduce themselves, and which we've already done a little bit, but it'll continue throughout the evening. We're also gonna conduct a presentation in two parts tonight. So first, we'll cover the section that leads up to, from Havana Street to Live Oak, that leads up to our portal. And then we'll cover the section that is in the underground tunnel. So we'll have two different Q&A sections focused on those different parts of the line. Now, I just want to remind everybody, the goal of these meetings is to hear from all voices. And so we want to be inclusive, not exclusive. So please make sure to leave some time for everybody to participate. You'll have opportunities later in the meeting to use the Q&A. I would recommend anytime you have a question, put it in the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen, versus in the chat. Chat will be closing very soon and is really just if you're having some technical difficulties. In addition to that, during the Q&A period, we will allow people to speak and open up your mic, and so we'll ask you to raise your hand to be recognized. And so with that, I would like to go ahead to, I guess, pass it off to my colleague Vikram, who's going to give us a bit of an overview about what is Project Connect.
Hey, thanks so much, Lonnie. So why are we here? And what you see here is a projection of the growth in Austin's population. We're seeing a doubling of the population in Austin by 2040. So, you know, where are these people going to travel? How are they going to get to work, to play? So Project Connect helps us to answer that growth in the population of Austin. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, which is approved by the council in 2019, aims to keep the number of cars constant while growing our population by the additional 2 million people we just saw on the previous slide. You'll see that as we go through the design drawings, this is where policy rubber meets the road, and we are designing to a variety of modes. Here you can see the Project Connect program components. We have a new light rail system, a transit tunnel under downtown, an expanded bus system with 4 new Metro Rapid routes, as well as 9 new park and rides, and a transition to a zero emissions fleet. Next slide, please. The value proposition of Project Connect. So what we're really here to talk to you about and what we're looking to achieve is increasing the throughput of people on the street. You can see here in this illustration that the street on the left will move 126 people, with 80 of those folks in transit, whereas the street on the right will move 235 people, with 204 in transit. Next slide, please. Thank you. So really want to stress that Project Connect reflects the Austin community values. This project will help create thousands of good local jobs and provide more access to healthcare, education, employment, entertainment, and essential services. It will also create and maintain a more affordable place to live. This is a shared passion in our community for the environment. That's why we are committed to sustainable practices. They are core to Project Connect, including a zero emissions fleet. And technology and innovation inspire much of who we are as a region. And so Project Connect is embracing that spirit, looking to make transportation smarter, more efficient, enjoyable, and easier to use. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here you see an artist's rendering of what the street could look like. This isn't necessarily one particular area for either the orange or blue line, but it's representative of our program's goals. So just working our way left to right, new sidewalk, new bike lane, trees, roadway for vehicles, the light rail line in the center of the roadway with a station platform, and then a similar treatment in the other direction of new sidewalks, a bike lane, and trees. So where are we right now in the process? So we have completed our 15% design, and that was published in the summer of 2021. And we have entered into FTA, or Federal Transit Administration project development. We are working on our 30% design, and we are looking to release that in the summer. And this all leads to, in the winter, a final EIS, or environmental impact statement, and an FTA record of decision, or ROD. So just to give everyone an idea of where we're talking about, here you see a map of Austin, and the blue line and orange line are represented on here, as well as the gold line to ACC Highland. And we will be focusing our conversations on the South Congress neighborhood, as well as the Oltorf neighborhood. These station names are placeholders, but just to give you an idea of the geographic area we're talking about, we've left the station names represented on the areas. Yeah. And now I will hand it over to Jerry Smiley. Just before I do, I want to give a reminder that by this summer, all segments of the Orange Line will have a comparable walkthrough available online. We have done a similar meeting to this one for St. Ed's to Stasny segment and North Guadalupe. And you can see these online by going to the Get Involved page. And Jerry, all you.
Oh, thank you very much, Vikram. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Jerry Smiley, and I'm the project manager for the Orange Line Consulting team. So I wanted to remind everybody where we actually started. So back before the, oops, we lost our presentation here. Well, I'll start verbalizing until the picture comes back up. Back before the referendum, we went through a process called the alternatives analysis, which ultimately resulted in what we call a locally preferred alternative. And that's where we started at that time. The 15%, this was pre 15% design. So we did not have that, right? So, but after the referendum, and we go through the process of beginning the preliminary engineering effort, you go through all types of discovery and we lost it again. There we go. Thank you very much, everybody. So one of the things that we discovered, we always knew that we needed to have a tunnel in the downtown area. That's because the block lengths are too short to be able to accommodate a full length of a train and a train's platform in that particular area, because those block lengths are really short and we need to have at least 300 to 400 feet there for our full length trains. So we always knew that we were going to need to have a tunnel there. And the intent at that time was, after Republic Square, that we would come up as quickly as we could and cross over Lady Bird Lake on a bridge. And that was, again, before the referendum. But as we went through the design process, we determined that because of that distance and the depth that we needed to be for the Republic Square station, getting back up to grade in such a short distance was going to be not very favorable. It could be done, but it was going to be very challenging, as challenging for the vehicle to climb more than a 6% grade. Additionally, we identified that 2nd Street would need to be closed to the traffic. That's because the portal, that's the transition between your surface level running to your subway running. That portal is a very long is a very long thing that would have ended up causing us to block 2nd Street. We would not have been able to go east-west from there. But really the biggest problem in that entire area was the spaghetti bowl of utilities. And we're not talking just your standard utilities. We're talking significant utilities of water and wastewater mains that support all of downtown, and the electrical vaults that support the high-rise towers. They were very significant. So we determined that the best way to go would be to continue under the river. And if you can click there, we basically would stay underground. And you can see that in the illustration there below. So that was determined to be the best approach. And that's where we left off at 15% design. So let's click to the next slide. So at that point in time, the question became, all right, how do we want to get up, back from under the ground? We were looking at 2 options during our 15% design, what we called a short tunnel and a long tunnel. And you can see on the left hand, the short tunnel, that the portal, again, that's the transition point of where you come out from the ground, is around Nelly Academy area. And then the light rail would run at grade the rest of the way south as it went through the SoCo business district. Now, in that scenario, our South Congress station would have to be fairly far south in that Leland Mary area, because you have to have, it needs to really be on a flat spot. As we all are aware, the South Congress area, especially in the South Congress business district, it's quite a steep grade there. And it's just uncomfortable for passengers and trains and people who need with disabilities to have access to a platform
that's on a slope. So we need to go to a flat spot. And that area near between Leland and Mary, which is near the elementary school, was the best spot. The option B was an extension of that long tunnel, what we call the long tunnel. And that did a couple of things for us. First, it pushed the portal down to around Leland, just north of Live Oak. And what it did enable us to do, though, was to move the station back towards the heart of the SoCo business district. And so you can see here that it would be a cut and cover type of construction. It's about 65 feet underground, but it would be bored back all the way through to Auditorium Shores and back into downtown. And again, that portal would be just north of Live Oak. So that's where we were at 15% last summer. I'd like Sophia to transition it to her so she can explain where we've gone since then.
All right, thank you, Jerry. I'll introduce myself. I am Sophia Ojeda. I am the Director of Design for the Orange Line with Austin Transit Partnership. So since we last spoke, and as we collected more data in advancing the design, we found a new factor to consider, the Capitol View Corridor. I'll call it the CVC for short. Next slide. The CVC was written to maintain the view of the Capitol Dome from key vantage points throughout the city. Here is a look at the CVC and the South Congress Corridor, where the CVC runs from the Capitol to Live Oak. Here, you can also see the proposed underground station and portal locations that we will talk through later in the presentation. Next slide. This is how the CVC impacts the project. The two options we had at 15% are in the CVC. Our in-progress design reflects that we know the Capitol View Corridor extends to Live Oak. To comply with state law, the first location the train can surface is south of that viewpoint at Live Oak Street, and the tunnel is extended 900 feet further from the previous long tunnel option. The current extended tunnel option is the only option that is currently permissible given the requirements of the CVC. Next slide. Here you see all four options we have explored. The first is the option that we showed you earlier that Jerry went through that we found does not work due to technical constraints. And a reminder of what we looked at 15%, the short tunnel and the long tunnel options. And lastly, the long tunnel resulting from adapting to the underground components of the CVC. There are additional costs, which we will discuss on the next slide, but there are also additional benefits, such as it provides increased transit efficiency, has few neighborhood impacts, and provides for a more centralized SoCo station location. Next slide. Here we see the rough order range of costs. To set the stage for this slide and to put these costs in context, when we look at the pre-15% design, it's from 3rd Street to Live Oak, which is a little further south than what the graphic shows here. That cost was estimated in the range of $300 million to $350 million. And as previously discussed, that option proved infeasible. As we progress to 15% design, you can see the tunnel extended under the lake with various portal and SoCo station locations. Note these all now show Auditorium Shore Station as an underground station. The extended tunnel includes some significant additional costs, and when we come back at 30% design, we will have more clarity on the cost estimate. The extended tunnel in this location has an estimated total cost in the range of $1.4 billion to $1.6 billion, which is from 3rd Street under the lake to Live Oak. Essentially from the pre-15% design portal location near 3rd Street to the in-progress design portal location south of Live Oak. Additional costs will be part of overall program budget, segment phasing plan, and currently available funding sources. Note this is just part of the overall tunnel cost. Okay, we are now going to transition to walk through a segment between roughly St. Ed's near Havana and go north towards Nelly Academy. We'll cover the segment north of Nelly Academy in another working group meeting planned for June. But before we dive into the design, we want to orient you to what you're about to see in the engineering drawings. Next slide. North is to the right, south is to the left. The northbound tracks are red, the southbound tracks are blue. The sidewalks are outlined in orange, the bike lanes in purple. Fit lanes are shown in a light blue teal color. The right-of-way line is shown as a white dash line, and the curb line is a green dash line. Now, as we go through this, you may note there are property impacts in this segment. At this point, we have notified property owners, but if you are a business owner or know of one who has not had the opportunity to meet with us, we are using this as another touch point to be open and transparent. So please use this as an opportunity to get in touch with us. Andrew and Lonnie will now walk us through the proposed design update, starting with the area just north of St. Ed's.
All right, this is the fun part. Now, I know that today we've been talking a little bit about station areas versus portals, and that brings up the question, I guess if you go back to that slide, Vikram, you can see, like, here's what a portal might look like. So a portal is just a fancy way of saying this is the place where the train goes from the street into the downtown tunnel. And so I wanted to make sure that you at least could have a picture in your mind. And I just want to say for the record, this is the bare bones version of what this could look like. We are prepared to work with the community to design something that's a little bit more uniquely Austin than what we have here. But Andrew, it looks like you're on screen now, and this is not what people want to see. They want to see the specific engineering drawings, and I think you're sitting on that. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I'm trying to jump in right now. Let me know when you can see it.
Okay.
All right, very good. So this has been mentioned.
I still cannot see it. I see a black screen. There we go. There we go. All right, so lots of colors, and I have color blindness. So can you orient me a little bit better here?
Yeah, so just to reiterate what Sophia was going through, we're kind of imagine yourself as a bird in the air looking down on the transit system. Right in the middle of the roadway there, in that green highlight is where the light rail system will go. We're looking at a station platform at St. Ed's, which is represented by that hatch there in the middle. And then outside of that, in that light blue color, is where the roadway striping would be. So that's where the vehicles will be able to travel outside of the transit system in the middle of the road. And then outside of that, we have that green shape, green line. That's where the curb lines would be on the outside of the roadway system, with sidewalks and bicycle facilities outside of that.
Okay,
and
so
one thing that
where we left off during our last meeting, the St. Ed's to Stastny meeting. So we're heading north to the right to get over to Oltorf, right?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Cool.
So I'll pick it up just north of that station platform I mentioned.
Just want to zoom in just a little bit more. It's kind of
absolutely. How's that?
Maybe one more. There you go. There you go. Now I can see. Great.
Okay, very good. So I'll pick it up here at Havana Street, just north of that station platform. I do want to make a general point that, existing case today, cars are kind of able to freely move around these roadways. To put the transit system in place, we really have to control those turning movements and control where people can cross the transit way, for safety and operations reasons. So because of that, we will have signalized intersections at key locations, Havana being one of those locations where vehicles are able to make those turning movements and access the existing businesses on either side of the corridor. So Havana is a good example of where one of those signalized intersections would go. But there are, I'll keep moving north a little bit here, and bear with me on my bandwidth. I hope it's not too choppy for y'all.
So far, and I'm glad you brought up Havana, because I know that the Metro Rapid station isn't really centered around Havana, and neither is the hybrid beacon, but Havana is a central street for that neighborhood over there. So new access. for that part of town. All right, so we're heading north, it looks like. And I
Yeah,
see that
heading
there's
north.
2 lanes heading north and a left-hand turn lane there by University.
Yep. So so we get to La Vista and there's no longer the ability to cross the guideway or cross the street here. So vehicles would have to go to either University Circle here or Havana to make a U-turn and access either side of the street. So just wanted to point that out as an example for what the new access plan would be with the light rail in the middle of the street. You'll notice these driveway tie-ins. This green shape is kind of where we tie back into the existing pavement. We are going to maintain all driveway access along the corridor. So you'll notice these areas that cut into the sidewalk and bike ped. Those are where those driveways would go to the existing businesses along the corridor. I'll keep moving north. You'll notice these blue boxes. These will be local bus stops in the final configuration. So, key connection points with the light rail system. We're going to have to connect with the local transit systems as well, make those, key connection points along the way. So our design definitely includes, bus stops along the way, as well as our new light rail platforms in the middle of the road as well. I'll keep moving north here. Generally through this area, we are at the surface level with the light rail traveling in the middle. We do have generally 2 roadway lanes going each direction with those turn lanes at those signalized intersections. So the next major one here is going to be Oltorf. We have Cumberland as well. So kind of more of the same here, another signalized intersection, providing that access, the ability to do the U-turns as well. And we do have 2 more bus stops here as well. Do you want to keep moving to get to Oltorf? I think that's a little bit more of a nuanced location. I might zoom out a little bit.
No, I think it's going to be helpful for this audience here. Can you show, like right here in Cumberland, where the current right-of-way line is, and then the future proposed right-of-way line?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me zoom back in a little bit.
Thanks.
So the existing right-of-way line is represented by this white dashed line. It's a little bit faint, but I hope y'all can see that. And then this darker blue line on the outside is where the new right-of-way line would be. So especially in areas of our station platforms, certainly in areas where we're trying to accommodate local bus stops, we do have to push out the footprint of the overall, transit, roadway, bike ped, all that stuff together. And in certain cases, it does get pushed out beyond the existing right-of-way line. So here's an example of where the sidewalk would go around the proposed bus stop, and we do have proposed right-of-way along this area.
And I think this is a good time to just point out that there is a team working on right-of-way acquisition, and they have pretty much sent out mailers and tried to meet with people for whom there could be a right-of-way impact. And so if you're seeing this tonight and you're saying, oh, that's my property, I haven't spoken to you yet, please let us know in the Q&A. We absolutely do want to be in touch with you, and we have sent letters, but just sending letters doesn't mean the same thing as it's time to meet with you. So again, please take a look at that, keep an eye on those lines, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout the whole corridor tonight.
Thanks, Lonnie. Something else I want to point out is this red kind of triangle line combination, and that represents a retaining wall. So there are some areas where we are pushing out into some pretty steep grades, and because of that, we do need to have some walls. So just like Lonnie was walking through with the portal earlier, we do have retaining walls in certain key locations, and you'll definitely see this symbol come up as I keep walking further north. So just wanted to point out what that represented. I don't think that was discussed yet. But I will keep panning to the north. Just zoom out a little bit. So you're seeing a lot of those driveway access points, more of the light rail in the middle of the street. And you do start to see the light rail tracks get a little bit wider through here. And that is because we're getting to our Oltorf station. So what you see here in the middle is a center platform which will serve both the northbound tracks and the southbound tracks. And because of that, we have to push those tracks out to accommodate the station platform in the middle. And we do have some right-of-way impacts as a result of that to accommodate that full footprint of the station platform, the tracks, as well as the turn lanes at Oltorf. This is a very busy.
It looks like you're right by the HEB, and with that center platform, it looks like when you arrive and when you leave the HEB, you're on the same side of the street. You don't have to cross Oltorf anymore carrying your groceries. So that's exciting. But I do see that the right-of-way line looks like it's pushing over into the east side. Are you running into buildings there, or like what are those impacts looking like?
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Lonnie. We do have a little bit more right-of-way impact on the east side, and the reason for that is there's some major utilities on the HEB site that we're needing to avoid. So we are pushing out to the east, but I'm glad you pointed out that we are not hitting any buildings in this location. So we do have some additional right-of-way takes on this side of the roadway, but no building impacts associated with those.
Okay, so now we're getting to Oltorf, which means we're almost out the portal. I'm excited. I'm sure a lot of people here today want to see what's going on South Congress, so we're about to get there.
Yep, and I just want to make one more point about Oltorf before we move on. As you see on the north side of the intersection here, the roadway starts to curve around, and because of that, we have located the station platform on the south side. So sometimes we look at having side platforms on either side of the roadway, but in this particular case, because of the roadway curvature, we are putting the platform just on the south side here. And as Lonnie was alluding to, we are getting into that portal transition location. So just coming up to College Street here, you'll notice that the shading starts to turn from green to blue. And that represents where we start to go from the surface down to underground. So you'll notice that red triangle shape picking back up. That represents the retaining walls on either side of that portal transition.
And it looks like there's some impacts there. That looks like the Teal House. That looks like Southside Flying Pizza having some.
Correct.
So if you're in the audience tonight and you haven't spoken with anyone from our right-of-way acquisition team, this would be a good time to reach out and let us know. In addition, I'll just share our email address, which is feedback@capmetro.org. You can always send an email there if you don't feel comfortable sharing your contact info on the Q&A, and we will be in touch with you directly. All right, so that color change is where you're transitioning from on the surface to down into the portal. And it looks like the portal's that pink box.
That's correct. So yeah, that blue shading is kind of the transition area between the green, which is that surface level light rail, and the pink box is where we first get underground. So from Live Oak heading north, we are fully underground. The pink box represents where we'll actually have to dig down from the surface to construct the underground transitway. But once we go further north from the pink box, we're in what's called a bored tunnel configuration, meaning we don't have to dig down from the surface. So the impact to the surface during construction, is not going to correspond with the tunnel boring machine. It'll only correspond with these areas where we have to dig down from the top. So there is a short. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Lonnie.
Oh, Andrew, I was just going to say, I think we made a promise to people that we would stop before we got too far down into the tunnel to see if there are any questions leading up to the tunnel section. So I kind of want to wrap up right here, and then we'll open to Q&A. And again, this is that version of the portal. So this is literally where we stopped, where the train was about to go in the tunnel, and now we're asking some questions. Now, I know that people have been putting their questions in the Q&A, but I did want to encourage people, if you can see at the bottom of your screen, you can raise your hand, and we'll certainly take some questions there. I'd also want to encourage Sophia and Jerry and possibly Vikram, maybe even Anna, to turn on their cameras so that way we can ask some of these questions here. I know this one is probably for Jerry or Sophia. There was a question about why would the Capitol View Corridor affect the train? Can you give a little bit more color commentary about what's going on with this Capitol View Corridor?
Yeah, so if you can imagine that the Capitol View Corridor is actually it's a plane, so it has at a specific height, it has to go from, you have to be able to see from the designated viewpoint all the way to the dome. In other words, you can't construct anything in the middle of that blocks the view of that dome. The viewpoint for South Congress happens to be at Live Oak, but the designated viewpoint is actually 8 feet under the ground. But regardless, that plane, that red plane there, that red line cannot be broken. So for the short tunnel, as an example, the station that would be located near Lively Middle School, that structure of the canopies and the overhead catenary system, which powers the train, that would break that plane. Additionally, if it's the long tunnel, which would be on the previous design, the 15% design, we were showing that the long tunnel would emerge there just north of Live Oak Street. And that portal itself, and the portal is not just a hole in the ground. The portal has side structures, things that support, so vehicles, for example, don't accidentally drive into the portal. Or if there's an accident at the surface that nobody can go over, it's kind of like like a Jersey barrier on a highway, for example. It's about usually that size, and they can be taller. They can have landscaping associated with them. There's a lot of different things you can do with these portals. Regardless, that portal is still going to break that plane of the view corridor, and also you still have the catenary system, the poles that hold up the wires. Sophia, anything to add to that?
I was just going to emphasize, I think the unique characteristic that we found out with the Capitol View Corridor is that it actually goes underground, like 8 feet underground. That was not something we expected when we were researching this and looking at state law and things like that. So that's kind of what caused us to also take another look at that design for the portal, the stations, and ultimately ended up with the extended tunnel.
I see several other questions, and I know people are working on the Q&A in the background to post. I see a question here about like the interaction with traffic. So one person asked, like, is the train going to blow its horn? Another person was asking, are we stopping traffic, or is traffic going to stop the train? Could anybody talk a little bit more about that?
I'll start with the train noise. Couple of things is we're still trying to figure out what the train is going to look like, how it's going to interact, and what our operations will look like. While we don't expect that we would have to blow the whistle or blow the horn as we're coming out of the portal, it's something that we have yet to fully determine. In traditional operations, a bell is usually rung as you're leaving and entering the station, and the horn itself, which is the really loud horn, it's usually used in an emergency. If there's a car that's stuck, a person that's laying across the tracks, it's usually just a really loud horn, and those are used for emergencies. Pass it to Anna for the traffic signaling question.
Thanks, Sophia. Anna Martin with the City of Austin Transportation Department, and we're the entity that operate and maintain all the traffic signals in Austin. We've been working really closely with the ATP and design teams on what this will look like in the future. And we've made the commitment and goal that the LRT will receive priority. And that means that the goal is to progress trains from station to station without delay. So unless something major is going on, the train should not typically be stopping at red lights. And so the travel time should be very, very reliable. We do have lots of other modes and needs to balance, so we have a lot of work to do to get there, but that is our commitment to this project.
And sort of related to this, people are wondering about how can cars and bikes and pedestrians cross over the tracks. Is there a general theory going on there that you could speak to and let us know if there's going to be an impact for those travelers?
So we will want cars as well as cyclists and pedestrians to cross at signalized protected locations. And they'll be in a crosswalk, you know, just like they are today for the pedestrians and bikes.
Thanks. Let's see, it looks like there was a question here from Terry saying, is the timing of construction determined at all by the negotiations with property owners? You know, how are we going to determine that construction timeline? Let's see, maybe I should give that to Jerry or Vikram. I think you all have been working with the right-of-way teams.
I have to leave that to Vikram. I mean, as far as the construction timing, I mean, that is so far out. I mean, it's going to be a while. You know, post the record of decision.
Jerry, like, when is the earliest possible time that construction could start on this project?
I'll answer that. So we're, as you may know, we are going through the environmental phase with the draft EIS being published this summer, followed by a final EIS, which is also the submission to the Federal Transit Administration. Once they're able to look at that and review that, we receive what's called a record of decision. Once that record of decision comes in, that's when we can begin the real estate process for the alignment. As far as construction is concerned, the way that the schedule is looking now is we're looking between end of 24, early 25 for construction to start. And that allows us time to get through, you know, where we are now in design to final design to get the plans permitted and everything designed for it to be constructible.
And just for those who are watching, first, anybody who's within Zoom can raise their hand if they'd like to ask a question live. Again, you can use the Q&A. For those of you who are watching at home, either on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, you can also ask questions there, and they will be converted over to the Q&A in Zoom, so that way we can bring them into the room. So please feel free to ask questions if you like. I know that this is a little early in the conversation because we're about to switch to the tunnel, but I think you've already mentioned that that tunnel is going to be a boring tunnel, not, well, maybe a bored, I don't know. It's going to be exciting.
Bored tunnel, not a boring tunnel.
In this tunnel, right? So can you speak a little bit about like what that means in terms of impact and cost versus doing a cut and cover tunnel situation? Jerry, you probably have the most experience there, but I think Sophia, you're also planning.
And Andrew actually led this, so I can start just real quickly, and I'll let Andrew speak to it. But bored tunnel will be the fastest construction method that we can use. We have very good geology in this particular area, so it should go relatively quickly. And there, when you have a bored tunnel, there are no surface impacts during that construction. However, you will have impacts near the station areas, because we're the underground station areas, because you typically build those from, you know, you have to open it, do a series of open cuts, because you have to build platforms, mezzanine sections, you know, entrances, exits, things of that nature. And that's typically done in open cut. And when you do open cut, you're basically going back, you're opening it up, and then you're covering it, right? So you're covering it with, Sophia and Andrew, you're probably better at saying this. You cover it, so it's open underneath, but you can still drive up on it on top, and then the construction will happen from underneath. So there's a lot of different things there, though. And I'll let Andrew and Sophia expand on that.
Yeah, on that point, on the temporary traffic decking is what it's called. It's essentially a steel plate that will go over that excavation so traffic can travel over that excavation during construction below. And that allows access to be maintained to the roadway and to businesses and all that good stuff. And I'll just point out on the cost, there's kind of an economy of scale with the bored tunnel. So if you go a certain distance, which this project is, it really does become, really cost effective to use a boring machine rather than the cut and cover construction method. So that's definitely the case here. It's got a lot of benefits, both for cost and certainly, as you pointed out, Lonnie, for impacts to the community. That those impacts won't be seen at the surface level, except for those key locations that Jerry mentioned, station locations, and then where that boring machine would be extracted and put into the ground.
And the last thing I'll add, Lonnie, is at the portals, those portals will be considered as open cut, meaning it's open, literally open cut. There is no cover to it because that is where the train enters and exits the tunnel.
I had one more question before we move on to the underground section. In the picture we saw of the portal, there was a light rail line there with an overhead catenary. So what's the deal? I think there have been a couple of different discussions about the electricity that'll be used for the train. Are we using a catenary? Are we not using it? Who's got the scoop there?
So the scoop is we're still determining that. not a hard scoop there, just still a soft serve ice cream here.
Okay.
And that, but we are looking at all the different technologies. We are looking at cutting edge technology on the vehicle, on how that can be powered. We're looking at on wire, which is what you see here. We're looking at off wire, which is a battery operated train or vehicle as well. So more to come on that. That is pretty exciting. We're talking to a lot of vehicle manufacturers and trying to see what's out in the industry, not only for today, but what could exist in the future that we could take advantage of.
Well, thanks for that context, Sophia. And now I think we're gonna move through the walkthrough from Live Oak to Academy, also known as Nelly for some of those out in the audience, and take a closer look at what's gonna be happening on SoCo itself. So let's take it away, Andrew.
All right. Let me know when you can see my screen. I know there was a little bit of a delay last time.
I gotcha.
All right, fantastic. So I think we're picking it up really just where that rendering was showing that transition point. So as Sophia mentioned, the blue is that open cut where we're transitioning down underground. The pink would be an area of cut and cover, meaning we are digging down from the surface to the underground. And then you can kind of see, this is a really good transition point to point out. I'm going to pan over to the right a little bit, but you can see where that pink shape just gets a little bit wider, and that represents the location where that boring machine will be extracted from the ground. So we need a little bit of a wider footprint to take the machine out of the ground at this location. But as a benefit for using the boring machine, really everything from the north from this location is going to be
recording stopped.
I think the recording stopped. Not sure why.
Yeah, that's fine, Andrew. You can keep going.
Okay. So we
recording in progress.
We are in a bored tunnel configuration from here heading north. You'll notice that our roadway improvements generally follow to the next major intersection. So that's why you see those roadway improvements continuing and not just dropping off with our cut and cover. So we are taking those roadway improvements all the way to Leland Street. I can tell you that the city of Austin is looking at, parallel projects to this one that will essentially fill in the gaps where we don't have those surface impacts and aren't doing, associated roadway bike ped improvements. So ideally that will be a kind of a concurrent process along with the Orange Line construction. So I'll keep moving north here. We are in the fully bored tunnel configuration, so you'll just notice that's all we're showing here. There's no surface impacts through this area. Passing by Lively Middle School, through Mary, through Annie, and once we get to Milton Street, that's where you'll start to see those roadway improvements pick back up. And then you'll also notice a darker light green line here, and that represents our station box. So really that thicker light green line here is going to be the major area of impact in this location, where we will have to dig down from the surface to dig out our station box to accommodate the station platforms in the middle, as well as 3 entrance locations for this station at SoCo.
So Andrew, what you're saying is over here, we'll stop doing a tunnel boring and we'll have to do pretty much a hole in the ground to build out the station. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Vikram. So really outside of the thicker green line, we'll be in that tunnel boring machine configuration. And then everything within that thicker green line, the station box, will be constructed with a cut and cover method.
And so what are roughly the limits of that cut and cover method? It looks like it's a couple of blocks there. Could you tell us the street names?
Yeah, so we have a few entrances, one just south of Monroe. So you see a tiny little sliver there to accommodate that station entrance. Then from Monroe, generally past Elizabeth, through the middle of the street is where the core of our station box is. Then we have 2 other entrance locations here on the corner at Elizabeth and South Congress. We have our primary station entrance, and this is the largest footprint and kind of the, the identifier for the public, really, that a nice transit station is down below them. This is kind of called that primary prominent station entrance, whereas these are a little bit smaller footprint. They need to be in line with the sidewalk and the bicycle facilities, so they can't be quite as wide. But we do have one there at Monroe, as well as just north of Elizabeth near the home slice is where that other secondary station entrance would be.
Oh, very cool. And yeah, so here we see a station cross-section example. So Andrew, it looks like it's more than just one floor to this. Could you talk us through kind of the considerations here and what we're looking at?
Yeah, so the surface level here is pretty obvious. We've gone through the 3 different locations. On this cross section, you're not seeing the western secondary entrance. It's kind of behind the Trudies here, but that's where that secondary entrance would be. These entrance locations essentially provide vertical access to our mezzanine level. That's that middle level that you see here in the cross section. And that's where passengers can either decide if they need to go north or south on the transit system. And from that mezzanine level, they'll either go down on one side of the platform or the other, depending on which direction they're going. So that's kind of a circulation level. The lower level, the very lowest level, is where the trains will run. That's where passengers will access those platforms. And then the very top level is what we call kind of the back of house. And that's where some of the ancillary facilities will go to serve the station, but those won't be available to the public. Those are just for to serve the station, to maintain it and to operate it.
Oh, great. And now here we see the layout of the station. So Andrew, just working our way south to north, it looks like we have a secondary access proposed in front of kind of a Noah Marion and the Hummingbird development, it says on there.
Right.
And so would that be stairs and an escalator, or just stairs? And where's the elevator going to be here?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's stairs and an escalator in this particular location. We do have an elevator as you go a little bit further north, just in front of the Allen's Boots, a little bit past it. Likewise, in the eastern secondary access location, we do have another stair escalator combo. So that smaller footprint that can accommodate the bicycle and pedestrian facilities kind of around it or behind it. And then we do have in the middle that primary entrance, which will have both elevators as well as some of our vent facilities that need to serve the station. So That's kind of a dual purpose location where we have to have some of the air push and pull from that corner there near the church. But that is also going to be our primary entrance. That should be the most prominent location that kind of marks the station for the community here.
Yeah,
that's that corner.
Like a new configuration now that the station is in that primary heart of the district. I see some chatter in the Q&A, kind of giving you a thumbs up for that. It looks like this area right here is a proposed primary station entrance. For some of us, we might think of this as being where Hey Cupcake was back in the day. This space is one of the few places where there's room for this grand entrance without sacrificing a physical building in this area. And so I think we've got some slides here, kind of like our sort of a Pinterest reel, some inspiration of what we're thinking about in this area. This is what a head house looks like in New York, for example. We've got a few more here. Let's kind of slide through those. Here's one in Spain, a little bit more modern, maybe something that's lit up, maybe something a little artsy in this space would be fun. What else have we got? Here's one in Philly, kind of a see-through area, and I think there's like a water feature in that one. Let's keep going. Some other smaller head houses for the secondary access panels. So again, these are the areas that might, this could look like what the staircase and escalator or what the elevator entrances could look like. Now, we're not going to copy the design from Seattle or New York or Philadelphia. These are just examples of other cities and how they've done it. We in the city of Austin are going to do it our own special way. Let's see, have you got any more images? Yeah, actually, you know, some of you may be familiar with Cap Metro in its current location at the SoCo station. And you'll notice those electrical boxes there were an art project that went with the Metro Rapid. So we have a long history of, you know, kind of bringing the look and feel of SoCo in this area, and we're eager to engage with the arts community to bring that there. As a side note, I know we were talking to some folks from the PID and the Merchants Association, and they said they're going to be expanding this art box project in the corridor. And I'm excited to hear that. It means that we've got that right look and feel, and that you're hoping to expand it in the area. So hopefully you'll feel that way about the new head house and station as well. Thanks, Meg. So this is a slightly cleaner version. This is what happens afterwards. This is a cross-section of the future design, but it's also flexible based on the feedback that we get from this meeting and future meetings. And remember, we're on the 30% design round, 60% is ahead, and we'll be talking about look and feel. But what you're seeing here is that those station entrances are in areas that do not block the sidewalk. We'll be reclaiming some of the public space, which currently is a home for a parked car that could become the home of a station entry. You'll notice that there's also a bike lane as well as a sidewalk in this image. You'll notice also that the turn lane in the center is maintained, and that's because we're not running the light rail there, it's underground. And something else, those cutouts there are for on-street parking. And the city will be talking a little bit more about that, but at least in this section, we're going to convert to parallel parking versus the back end parking. And you can see further down on the slide, some of those sample cross sections. So if you're one of those people who's like, all right, this is not how I see the world from above, I see it from the street level, you could look at those images at the bottom and see that, for example, there's that head house with the stairway, but there's still plenty of room for sidewalk and bike lane there. We're not asking anybody to sacrifice that public space. All right, with this, I think we're gonna turn it over to Joseph. Thank you, Joseph, for being here, just to talk a little bit about a parallel project going on in this area.
Thank you, Lonnie. Everybody, my name is Joseph Alhadri, and I am with the Austin Transportation Department. And yeah, parking is a big deal, and we understand that the South Congress area has dealt with parking and mobility challenges over time. It's very well documented, and we know there's a bunch of questions about how construction and even after how this is going to affect mobility and parking in the SoCo district. So while Project Connect and the train will provide long-term sustainable solutions, like they said, it's years away from completion. So we need to start planning now. So in the interim, we will be meeting with the community here shortly to talk about how we start that process now and what that looks like. Back in 2019, prior to the pandemic starting, we were did a parking study. And in that parking study, in the South Congress area, it showed that there was need for mitigation, and it provided a number of strategies for us to start looking at that. The first strategy it suggested was a parking and transportation management district, or you'll hear some people say PTMD for short. What that is, it's really a partnership with the city of Austin to really provide parking and mobility mitigation and solutions for this area with the community. One of those is paid parking, looking at residential permit parking, looking at commercial vehicle loading, and how we start that working together to create those solutions, as well as a way to provide funding through parking dollars and putting those into action to see how we can help out with this area with mobility projects in the future. So go ahead and go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about what that process looks like. So we want to create and formalize a local advisory committee, and that's where we are right now. We are reaching out, talking to the individuals to start looking at meeting and starting the process of really looking at what these PTMD boundaries are. Boundaries are important as when we start looking at how funds can be used in the district and how mitigation works. We will want to have the boundaries set so that we can really focus on the projects within that area, as well as mitigation and other solutions. After that, we'll be submitting a formal application that puts out a different number of parking solutions, different ways for us to connect and understand how we mitigate some of the construction impacts during the construction phase of the train. So and then once we have all of those kind of put together and understanding the financial impacts, we'll go to the respective communities and really look at how we can work together to bring this to council and get approved for this policy. What this policy does is allows us to start working on those mitigation solutions now, prior to the impacts through construction and through the finishing, and understanding that we already have some challenges now. So it's great to get ahead of that. So once it's approved, we are looking at starting those discussions about what tools we're going to put into place and trying to implement them prior to getting to those construction and issues that potentially could cause delays in the area. Yeah, sure. And I can answer any questions if y'all have, or when we expand on it a little bit more.
Well, let's see, Andrew. I think you were going to continue a little bit with the engineering drawing, or are we ready for Q&A in this section?
Yeah, let's keep going all the way to Academy, so then we can have a robust discussion.
For everyone.
Right.
Great.
And
Thanks.
we're almost done with the walkthrough. There's just a bit more to cover. So I'll share my screen again.
It's funny, if you're watching from home, believe it or not, we're ahead of schedule. We're doing great on time.
All right, so there will be a chance to ask more questions about the station. I do want to keep this moving so we can get to that Q&A and start answering some of y'all's questions. We have a lot of time for that at the end. So I'll just kind of continue from the north side of that station box, which, to remind you, is that thicker green line. We are carrying the roadway improvements to the next intersection there at Gibson. And then we're back in that board tunnel configuration that we were mentioning earlier. So
everything's underground now.
Everything's back underground, no impact to the surface. But I do want to point out one kind of weird looking shape here near the Circle Drive. And that's an emergency egress location, which essentially, because of the fire code for building an underground tunnel, the distance between this station and our next station up north at Auditorium Shores, it's just too long to safely, in the event of an emergency, say there was a fire in the tunnel or there was smoke and we needed to get people out of that tunnel. There's a certain distance that people have to be able to travel per the fire code. So because of that fire code, we do need an emergency egress point within a certain distance. So that's what you'll notice there at that location near the circle.
I'm glad you brought that up, Andrew, because we've been having some discussions about wanting to get in touch with the folks at the Continental Club, just because we know that there's a lot of loading and unloading that happens there for live music. And we can work with you to make sure that that loading and unloading can still happen there. It just may be a slightly shifted location from where it currently is happening.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Lonnie. So currently, I'll just zoom in a little bit. Currently, that's open for vehicles to pass through. In this configuration, that pass-through location would be closed. This portion of that green shape would be at the surface level. So vehicles would no longer be able to pass through. We would maintain the sidewalks on either side, and we would add a new curb line along the circle. So kind of an additional loading space for the businesses in the back of the access along the circle. So that's the current plan. Just a reminder, all of this is very early stages and subject to change as the project goes on, but we do need to accommodate an emergency egress location somewhere between the stations, and this seemed like the most logical location at this stage.
Great. Let's keep heading north. I think we just have to make it to Nelly Academy, and then we can release the Kraken.
We're almost there. So just continuing in that board tunnel configuration to Nelly and Academy, no more surface impacts for the transitway until we get a little bit further north to Auditorium Shores Station. So a little teaser, if anyone's interested in that location in particular, please join the working group meeting that will cover that area and some portions of downtown and near the river.
And Andrew, while you've got this slide up, could you slide back up the hill near the station location? I know we saw a question in the chat about impacts to buildings near the station. And I think there was a question about Home Slice Pizza. So could you, here we are at Elizabeth Street. Is there a building impact there or not?
So there are no building impacts for the station box itself. You'll notice there are some pink lines, and those represent just temporary support for our excavation, but those are not going to impact any of the buildings in the area.
So we're maintaining the white line in terms of right-of-way impact on the surface.
That's right. Yeah, we do have some impacts to the seating area that's currently in the sidewalk. So no building impacts, but kind of part of the Home Slice property, there would be some impacts to those sidewalk seating areas.
So that's one of those examples where working with the right-of-way acquisition team, we would be able to work with that business operator and property owner to make that whole. So, certainly as you improve that patio area, we would be working with you to make sure that that is maintained. Thanks for just circling back up there, because that's one of those places where it's confusing. That pink line makes it look like you're going to cut into the building, and it looks like that's not going to happen. All right, let's see. I've got some other questions here. One of my favorite ones is, how deep is it going to be from the surface? Got a thought there? Like how deep into the ground?
So we go about, depending on the location, we're pretty steep grade. So even if you're looking at the north end or the south end of the station, it can vary quite a bit. So I'll give a range from about 50 to 65 feet under the ground, all the way down. A little bit less to get to that mezzanine level, and then as you go down from there, you're getting to that very bottom, about 60-foot level.
Okay. Well, let's see. I guess you can probably stop sharing the screen for now. We're going to ask everybody to turn on their cameras again. and ask some questions. It looks like it would be great if Sophia and Jerry and Anna, maybe even Joseph came on as we start addressing some of these questions. Let's see. So there are some questions about the road improvements over the district generally. Anna, did you want to start there or and kind of address that? The question is, they're asking if there are plans to match it or plans for an upgrade of SoCo just generally.
I was muted. Great question and something we need to work through. We, in partnering with ATP, we're kind of keeping up as their design progresses. At one point, we thought that they were going to be on the street level all through SoCo, which would have meant they would have rebuilt the cross section. Now we know because of the Capitol View corridor that the light rail has to be underground, and that leaves some work to be done on the surface. So now that is becoming more clear, on our side, we're going to start planning of what would have to happen from the city side to make the street complete and to give that seamless multimodal access to the station and to all the destinations around SoCo. So more to come, but that's something we would definitely want to work with the community and all of our stakeholders on the corridor as we discuss what that might look like.
Thanks. Something related is, I'm not sure if Anna, if you would do this or Joseph, but there's a question about what about ride share and vehicle pickup drop off?
Mm-hmm.
How are we planning to accommodate that on the corridor?
Yeah, I can just that one. Well, and that's really a part of that parking and transportation management district, right? It's part of those tools we would look at, rideshare data, understand it, and potentially look at pickup and drop-off zones along Congress or even on some of the side streets. So we would, work with the community and use some of our data to be able to determine what those would look like, as well as, with our traffic engineers.
Okay, great. Let's see. This one, I'm not sure, maybe Sophia, you might want to answer this. Are there going to be any public restrooms in the South Congress station? Or do I have to keep buying a coffee to go to the bathroom?
We are provisioning to have public restrooms at the SoCo station at the mezzanine level. The details of that are not worked out, but we are provisioning that in our design.
Thanks for that. Let's see. Again, just as a reminder for those who are watching, I'm trying to diligently go through the Q&A, and I don't promise I'll get to all of your questions. If you've got a burning question, you could always raise your hand and we'll call on you. It's a little scary, but we'll do it. Also, for those who are watching from home, you can ask questions in the chat in Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, and we'll try to bring them into the conversation too. Let's see, the safety in the middle of the tunnel exiting to the web. So there's some questions here about, let's see, though the ASMP recommends 4 car lanes, shouldn't the increased throughput of the light rail more than make up for a reduction in the car lane? So this is like this ongoing chatter that's going in the background. I think the general question is, why aren't we reducing down to 1 car lane in each direction throughout Congress? Why are we maintaining 2 through lanes? I'm sure, Anna, you probably want to talk about that.
Thanks, Lonnie. So as we worked with ATP to plan out the alignment, there are segments of the orange line as well as the blue line where we will be replacing car lanes in order to accommodate the train. On SoCo, however, that is not the case. We have, through the most of it, we have all the right-of-way we need to accommodate everyone. And as planned in the ASMP, Congress Avenue is still a really important north-south arterial, providing access into downtown. As you move south on South Congress, it also turns into TxDOT right-of-way, which brings in other considerations as well. So the plan right now is to maintain those 4 vehicular lanes.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. I know not every street is created the same in the city. And so, and here we have a really wide boulevard to work with. Joseph, it looks like you've got some fans in the audience. And they're wanting to know when you're taking the team back on tour to talk about the parking district. Do you have any dates in mind, or just kind of generally?
Yeah, sure. I mean, right now, tentatively, we want to do this as soon as possible. We know that impacts could, are already, is a challenge. And so I'll be reaching out in the next week, in a couple weeks, to start those conversations, to look at people's schedules and to understand, where we start. And we understand that there's multiple projects and multiple meetings going on in different places. We want to respect that, but we understand how important this is and getting this in place. And so we'll try our best to start that process now and hopefully get something in place by the end of the year.
Thanks. I'm going to kind of change gears a little bit from cars and parking to bikes. There was a question about bicycle parking in this area. Sophia, perhaps you might want to talk about not only bikes, but also Metro Bike and any plans in this area.
Yes, again, we are also provisioning to have parking. We're not sure if they're going to be racks or lockers or what that's going to look like, but we are provisioning space for that at the surface level for both regular pedal bikes and for the Metro bikes as well. Mm-hmm.
Has there been any plan to bring the bike storage underground?
Not currently, but it's not something that we, won't consider. But right now, it's all at the surface level.
Okey-doke. Well, let's see. I don't see new questions coming in. There's just generally a question. We might as well ask this here on the record about how long is this all going to take? So I know we've asked various versions of this, but when's the earliest we might start construction? How long does construction take? Generally, why aren't we building it in 1 year? The entire system, that kind of stuff.
All very good questions. And, if I could see 10, 15 years in the future, I'm not sure I'd have this job. Sorry, boss. But if I had those ability to see that far into the future. But as far as construction, we're looking at, again, as early as 24, 25. And we're looking at revenue service, thereabouts of 29, 30 timeframe. In between that, of course, the orange line is very long. We don't have all the details on where construction would start, how it would be segmented, how it would be phased. But these are all active conversations ongoing. So hopefully more to come soon on that.
And again, I would encourage people to raise their hand if they've got questions. I see, Eve, your hand disappeared on me, but here we go. We've got some hands raised. Mark Thompson, I see your hand and I'm going to allow you to talk. So welcome, you're on the air.
Howdy. Hey, so if you could just discuss the location selected for that safety exit, that seems a really busy segment of the district here. And why not move it to the middle? Just as a concept, if it's safety related, put it in the middle.
So Andrew, can you flash back on screen where that safety exit is? And that way we can refer to it. And then I'm not sure who's the best person to answer why it was placed in that location versus another location. Thanks for that question, Mark.
And I'm going to add on to that after this, Andrew, after you answer this question. We can just travel a little far north. We have a request to look at the Academy section just after you address this one.
All right, so we're back to this.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yep. Can you handle it, Andrew?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can just talk about why this location was chosen. It's somewhat of a redundant access point to the same street here, the circle. So we're trying not to impact buildings with this location first and foremost. So any, unbuilt area of the right of way we can look at that's priority number one. So the little throughput area was considered somewhat redundant as far as vehicular access. Now the big thing, as we talked through earlier, is business access for loading and unloading first and foremost. So, we really do need to get in contact, as Lonnie mentioned, with the business owners around this area in particular to better understand how currently trucks access and, you know, make those loading and unloading moves to see if this configuration is going to work for them or if it might need to be modified.
And then,
But,
you know, the question was really like, why isn't it in the middle? And I'm assuming you mean like the middle of the street.
Yeah, okay. So to address that part, you know, we are maintaining turning movements at this intersection. So to put the physical, you know, egress location in the middle of the street, we would have to take the space that's reserved for turning movements at this intersection. So in this particular case, that's why it was not put in that location.
And right there, we're kind of across from the Hotel San Jose and Joe's, and that's a big parking lot there that you're pointing to.
I was thinking more of like, why not have the exit in the middle of the tunnel, like close between the two stations, if it's for safety?
So you mean further
really
north?
Close. Yeah, this is really close to the other one. It seems like you were just off by a couple hundred feet or so.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we are just off by a few hundred feet in this particular instance. There's not a ton of free real estate in this area. Not to say it couldn't go other locations, but just based on the analysis, we did look at a few locations for this particular egress, and this was the most suitable location that we came up with. So
sounds like the question is also a little bit like, why didn't we slide the station a little further north in this district? Is there a reason why this Academy Drive, James Circle area isn't where the station is, and so as to avoid that emergency entrance?
So yeah, the station, if we were to slide the station further north, that would just kind of change the egress and exit points of the station box itself. So, you know, we do feel that this corner here where there's some unbuilt real estate, we do feel that this is a very suitable location for that primary entrance. So if you shift too far north, then you're losing that opportunity and potentially looking at other impacts for the station box. So
what I'm hearing you say is that station entrance takes up a lot of space, and if we shift the station north, we would wind up impacting a building with that station entrance. And this was an attempt to avoid building impacts where possible. That's what I'm hearing.
That's exactly right, Lonnie. Yeah.
Making sure. Engineering speak is different than public relations speak. Well, let's see. I'm gonna move to Michael Bullard, who's been waiting patiently with his hand up. Michael, I've allowed you to talk. All you need to do is unmute, and you can be on the air.
Hi, thank you very much for that. I put a little comment in the Q&A, so sorry if this is redundant, but in just looking at this, the overall plan, you know, I noticed that all of the improvements and kind of all of the potential right-of-way taking, all of those additional exits and entrances, even the emergency exits, are all on South Congress proper. And when I look at this, and I'm a real estate guy, I'm a real estate broker, I work a lot on South Congress, you know, I see the most valuable space, not just in terms of economics, but in terms of identity for the street and identity for our city, is the South Congress frontage. And I don't see anything in here that's contemplated putting anything on a side street. So for instance, and maybe it's a physical impossibility, but you can tell me otherwise, it seems like it would be maybe safer and much less expensive if you're trying to buy someone's property to put an emergency exit not spilling out into the middle of South Congress, but onto Academy and the other direction, maybe a little bit off the side. And the same with maybe a couple of those ancillary entrances and exits to the underground substation. If there is any way, and it may be physically impossible, but if there is any way to use some of those side streets rather than the South Congress frontage, which is so much more of a disruption of the businesses and all of the identity that they've created for the district on the frontage, that I would like to just suggest that be explored if that's possible.
Thanks for that, Michael. Let's see. I think, Andrew, could you put the drawing back up on screen? There were really two different things going on there. There was a request to kind of look at the secondary access points which is a little further south first, just to see, is there a reason why those entrances are on South Congress versus on Monroe or Elizabeth Street or Gibson Street instead? That's question one. The second one was looking at Academy. And so when we're done here, let's slide north on the street and head over to Academy.
I can take the first part of that question. So the short answer is we want to maintain, the easiest and quickest access points to the station. So given that South Congress is kind of the main, economic driver in this area, it's where all the businesses are, we want to maintain as direct of access as possible. So there is some benefit to having those station entrances a little bit more prominent, a little bit easier to access, easier to locate, and so on. If you go on, just to give an example, on Monroe, you wouldn't be adding an additional, area of excavation since you're not going as far. So there's no, no technical reason why that couldn't happen on Monroe. But to give another example, here in front of the home slice, say you wanted to go to Gibson, for instance, you would be adding an additional amount of excavation to get from the station platform here all the way to that turn to accommodate that entrance on Gibson. So it is kind of case by case whether that's feasible or not, but there's no hard rule that those can't be located on a side street if the right of way can accommodate it.
Did anybody else want to address that issue or right of way considerations or anything that went into that? Or are we feeling good? Either way, the comment has definitely been made in this meeting, and we've heard what you're saying, which is where possible, moving entrances to side streets versus frontage would be preferable. Now let's slide north and head over to Academy. I think there were a bunch of questions that have been coming in about Academy. So let's keep sliding north.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing in the chat is just a request to look at Academy once more on the screen. So if we can just zoom in a bit.
There we go. There's Academy Drive and Nellie. And they want to look a little bit closer here. So those white lines are those right-of-way lines. It doesn't look like there's any impact at Academy Drive or Nellie, right? It's just we're underground in a bored tunnel.
Correct.
Meg, are there any specific questions that you've been hearing that you wanted to bring up at this point?
No, but I see Bailey Harrington had his hand raised.
Well, let's see. Bailey, there's multiple Bailey Harringtons. So would the real Bailey Harrington please stand up by raising your hand, and then we'd happily put you on screen. There we go. All right. So Bailey, if you unmute, you'll be able to be heard by everybody.
Thanks, appreciate it. I'm on the phone and the computer. So I know I saw somebody from the city, I think, responded to this, but maybe we can dive a little bit into it. There's a lot of boring, open cutting, probably retention requirements and tiebacks that have to happen with all this. And all the buildings in this section of South Congress are extremely old. You're talking late 1800s. How are we monitoring? I know they do this all the time in big cities, but what kind of process does AECOM expect from the contractor in terms of adding monitoring devices to buildings, things like that, to make sure that the structural integrity of these buildings is maintained throughout the life of construction? This part of Congress, a little easier, a lot of tunnels, there'll just be some vibration, but as you get closer to like the Trudies or Gueros, stuff like that, you're kind of really close. So if you can just speak at a high level, I know it'll be more detailed as the designs get progressed.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Andrew or Jerry, did you want to take that? Sophia, any?
I don't have a ton to add, but I can just, I'm glad you mentioned the contractor, because that will absolutely be a requirement of the contractor. Our design, we don't specify exactly what type of monitoring would be needed, but I can tell you that we're very deep under the ground in most of these locations. We are in very favorable geological conditions. So as far as, tunneling through certain types of rock, it is very favorable from a, vibration and noise standpoint. but certainly we will require the contractor to monitor that as they're actually doing the construction.
You know, we had a kind of related question about the bored tunnel. Do we know how, what the diameter of that tunnel is going to be, and then how long it's going to be?
So the diameter of the tunnel from the very outside to outside, called the kind of outer diameter, is 34 feet and 4 inches. But again, this is all preliminary. We don't yet have a design vehicle, so there is some optimization to be done, and that will certainly be minimized once we have all those details in place. So kind of a placeholder, but 34 feet, 4 inches is the number right now.
Yep.
And you know, I did want to mention as an aside, because vibration is part of the NEPA process, and we currently have a virtual open house that is ongoing at projectconnect.com. If you go to the top of the screen, it says learn the latest about the orange and blue line in English or in Spanish. And if you click on that, you can go over to those environmental considerations and learn more about it, but also provide written feedback there as well about that concern. It will certainly be examined as part of the environmental process, and it will be part of our public hearings this summer to the federal government. So I can promise you a lot of effort is going to be going into making sure that historic properties aren't disturbed, and also that vibration and noise and sound are taken into consideration too. Thanks for suggesting that and bringing that up and bringing it into the conversation tonight. Again, we're getting to time, and so we've been furiously working on your Q&A responses. In addition, if you're out there and you want to raise your hand, you're welcome on screen as well tonight. And then for those listening on social media, you can always enter questions into the chat, and we will get to those as well. Let's see. I think the question that I'm seeing here before we kind of close down shop, if I don't see any hands raised, is coming from Brandon Hodge. Hi there, Brandon. He asks, do the escalators in the secondary access points, so not the main station entrance, but the secondary access points, are they going to be going both up and down, or is it going to go up in one and down in another? Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
They would go up and down at each station.
So there'll be an up and a down and a stairway at each one of those secondary access points. Great. So you don't have to cross the street to change direction necessarily.
Correct.
That's very nice.
At least at this point in time. I don't know that that is subject to change, but at this point in time, that is how they are all planned that way. Yes.
That's right.
All right. Well, I guess at this point, that kind of closes shop tonight for all of your questions. And of course, we want to encourage you to stay engaged. So some of you are hearing about this from email, maybe you saw it on social media. You can always go to projectconnect.com/get-involved. We've got some other upcoming workshops that we're excited about, and they're going to be big ones. Next Monday, the 11th, we'll be at Crestview Station from 5:30 onward. It's going to be a very long meeting. Then Tuesday, the 12th, we'll be talking about South Line projects, so everything south of Stastny. Then Monday, the 18th, we'll be at North Guadalupe Working Group. For those who've been watching these, we've covered the drag and we covered that 29th Street area. So for North Guadalupe Working Group, we're going to start at about 38th Street and go up to Koenig. So we'll combine a little bit with Lamar. But later on, we'll be doing a North Lamar and North Lamar Transit Center meeting. So be on the lookout for that. There's so many, we can't get them on the slide. So again, I'd recommend going to projectconnect.com. You can click on the Get Involved button. And if you'd like to see a recording of this or many, many, many other meetings, whether the PowerPoint or the video, you can also click on the new button we've got there, which is for the engagement library. So you don't have to hunt for it anymore. If that is not your way of communicating, you can always email us at feedback@projectconnect.com. You can write to us with snail mail, and our an address is there. And of course, we hope to see you at a working group meeting in other parts of town Perhaps as you're looking at this map on screen, there's a part of town that calls to you. But either way, we're so happy that you've been part of this engagement process. There are many, many, many more opportunities to get involved, and we hope to see you there. Have a good night, everybody.